Okay, good morning again. My name is Meng Yeh. I teach in Chinese here at our center. And my topic is about pragmatic competence in interaction in study abroad context. First, before I go into my research project, let me tell you some background information. Here at our center, we have Rise in China, 6-week study abroad. I have led this program for 3 years, from 2014 to 2016. And I designed the curriculum for these 6 weeks. And in this curriculum, I have several pragmatic units. Today, in this presentation, I want to focus on request and refusal, this unit. And before 2016, I used more traditional approach to teach pragmatic unit. I will say more about what do I mean traditional. And starting 2016, which is last summer, our center started looking at the importance of interactional competence. So in my curriculum design, so I redesign my curriculum to put this concept and this goal in the curriculum. So in my project, So for my research question is really, now my students in 2016, I have this new curriculum focused on interactional competence, which I called interactional competence-based instruction, IC-based instruction in this pragmatic unit. So the question is, for me as a teacher, does this IC-based instruction really improve students' pragmatic performance? So I look at the data. I have the data student performance in both 2015 and 2016, and I realized that before I can answer this question, I need to really look at that, what exactly the differences they are between these two performers. So for this presentation, I will really focus on to show you what's the difference I observe as a teacher. A little bit about interactional competence. As Batts and Hoot, they say, this is their quote, saying that saying is doing, language is action. Interaction focus not just what is said, but also that which is done and achieved. Okay? And to be more specific, the interactional competence is ability to accomplish meaningful social actions. Again, it's not just what's said, but it's term by terms. How do you, number two, to display your understanding of each other's talk, and also nonverbal behavior, and you anticipate and interpret what they say, and you produce your own action by language. Okay, and this is for instruction. Then this is our goal, to develop students' interactional competence. So there are 3 important components in this instruction. First, we need to guide students to analyze the conversational sequence, okay? The turn by terms. And another important component is that the analysis has to be based on authentic materials. In other words, textbooks, dialogues may not be sufficient enough, because after all, is by intuition we wrote it. It's not a natural conversation. And then once the students are aware of all this practice, these actions, we need to give students opportunity to practice, and we need to assess them to see if they really know how to use all this practice or actions. So this is the 3 components of this instruction. Now, the request and refusal unit in this 2 years, first I'm going to show you the main differences in terms of learning materials, instruction, practice, and assessments. And at the end, we will compare the performance. So, learning material. Before 2016, I used a lot of data for so-called discourse completion test, which is used a lot by pragmatic research. What does that mean? For example, they give a native speaker a scenario. For example, this is a request. You want to buy a snack in a nearby store, but you don't have money with you, ask your friend to lend you some. Okay, then see what native speakers say. We'll say, oh, can you borrow me some money? I forgot my money and I will pay you back later. And then record it and then become the response data. And I use a lot of this in my teaching material, either from the studies or I record from native speakers. And same as refusal. Now, but 2016, as I said, if you want the students to see the sequence, you have to use naturally occurring conversation. This is example in English, which I use too, because I want the students to see the contrast between English and Chinese. I use English, so it's easier for you to understand. So you can see in this conversation, Marsha is starting, say hello, and guess what? And finally to request, saying my car is stole, tell me the problem. Okay? So I use this kind of teaching material for students. Now, instruction. So instruction in 2015, I use, as I say, the data, right? I get it from discourse completion task. And my main goal is to help students to learn how to identify this, for example, request is direct or indirect, polite or impolite, explicit or implicit. So for example, a scenario, the room is getting cold, you want your colleague to close the window. How do you say? And I will show them, this data we collect and have guide student to identify the polite or impoliteness. Okay, and this is the instruction I used before. And then the practice, I will give them scenarios for students to role play in classroom to practice and use some of this strategy they learn. So this is 2015. But in 2016, as I say, we want to guide them to analyze the sequence of conversation. And the methodology I use is conversational analysis. This is a methodology to analyze, illustrate, and explain how people interact with each other through actual real-life talk. So we will look at turn-taking, we will look at opening, greeting, pre-request moves, strategy, and repair and closing. Okay, that's the where I will make students aware of all these actions. And in terms of practice, then I take advantage of study abroad context, not just give them role play to do in the classroom. I have them to go out to make requests in the real life to Chinese people. So they will make requests to host family, for example. Another important thing is I want them to record their conversation, even though the show is strange recorded, and they have to reflect on their own performance. So it's not just making requests, but they have to think about people's reaction, what did they do, is it appropriate or not. So same as to do refusal. So this is a practice I take advantage of the study abroad context. Now, instruction, and I will show you how I guide students to analyze the sequence. Let's take the English example. Here, Marcy said that hello is on the telephone, and Donnie said hello, Marcia is Donnie, and is Donnie. As you say, line 1, 2, 3, it's not talking about requests at all. It's just opening. You greet and you identify yourself. And then number 4 and 5, Donnie say, guess what? And Marcia say, what? Here, it's still not requests yet. So what are they doing? So I want students to think about it. Why all this move for, action for? It's a pre-announcement there is a trouble. Guess what? And what? And then we have Donnie say, my car is stolen. Marcy is silent. And Donnie say, I'm up here in Glen. Marcy say, oh. Okay? So I want students to look at this and think about what are they doing using this language, right? And then we can say something like, here, my car is stolen is announce a trouble. And here, what Marcy doing refusing is not saying no by silence. or say O to respond. So when you go through this, students get more idea how we do requests, right? Not just jump into requests. Already? Okay, so we'll go on. For assessment, I give the same role play. Okay, so the prompt is the students to request. It's a final exam week. You try to get your classmate to help you to review some math problem. You know that your classmate is quite busy now, but without her help, definitely will not do well in the test. How do you ask your class? Okay, this is a request, and the student B had to do the review. So you really like to help, but busy preparing your own final, so you don't have time. How do you respond? Okay, so for both years, have the same prompt. Now, as you say, in 2014, I asked students first to write a script and act out in the classroom. So at that time, I think it would be too difficult for them just act out impromptu. So I want them to write it down, so think about it probably more thoroughly. That's the thinking of the teacher. But then once I use different approach curriculum in 2016, I asked students to do it spontaneously, impromptu. Give them the scenario at the moment and act it out. So this is a summary of the difference between teaching material, instruction, practice, and assessment. Okay. Now, here is my students' performance in 2015. They wrote the script and add out. Okay, according to the prompt. As you see, there's 10 lines here. And start with, we are going to have a final soon. Jump into the prompt directly, all right? And at the end, it say, oh, sorry, I cannot help you. If you hope, I suggest a tutor for you, and end, all right? Now, let's see students' performance in 2016. I just show you a very short 1 minute clip of students' interaction here. Okay, I hope you can see the difference there, okay? Let's see. Let's see, where is the... All right, so here's my student says, okay, start with how's your weekend? Now, as you can see that they don't jump into the prompt. They have the greeting, okay? They ask each other, and then, and here, again, they have this pre-request, moves, telling the trouble, okay, because they're sick, preface the upcoming request. And here, talking about the math test, start to give the topic about the math test. And then they give compliment. Your math is good, okay, to make this request, this is easier to move, right? And then this is the beginning of the request to say, can I trouble you? Do you have time? This is more usually Chinese way to ask a request, okay? And finally, line 13, to say that, make the request, can you help me? And you will see students, to refuse, students say no, just have the hesitation and not exposed to refusal. So students need to see this and make this sequence much more clear for them. And the more interesting letter, because he's hesitate, the student keeps saying, the student made a request to offer, he see the trouble, right? Why he's hesitating, and to offer a candidate account is because you have other tests. and then the other student confirm it. And then this is very interesting. From 17 to 19, he say, my major is computer, which is true. His major is really computer, right? So he said that. Okay, so it's a repetition, and then transform this request into offer undertaking mutual benefits. Say, I can help you if you help me. Yeah. All right, and then he still hesitate. All right, so if we see the performance here, students in 2016, they are able to orient their constructed interaction, not just complete the text. They start with greeting, and they display their sensitivity to their participants' actions. So we see a lot of different strategies they use: tilting the trouble, compliment, providing a possible reason, mitigation, and then they transform the request into offer, right? So this is very interesting to me as a teacher. And the refusal, we see that students do hesitation, acceptance, and not explicit refusal. So, and then they end with proper ending. We didn't see that, but they have a proper ending to negotiate the time. So for conclusion is that the question is, are there differences? I hope you see that, and I see that as a teacher, students really demonstrate they have developed interactional competence in action, and then they perform many different actions that we don't see in 2015. So my next step is going into much more detail to continue the research. So I want to thank you for Ru, our postdoc in our center. He really helps us. He's in CA, so he's really helped out to look at the conversation, because as a teacher, I need to learn that too. So that's it. Any questions and comments?